Hide the broadcast. All right, cool. Chaos today, everyone on the ASP.NET community. Stand up. I'm Scott, and my hard drive is failing. Damien, what's failing on your side?
Just the usual. Occasionally my CPU decides that it doesn't want to go above 0.83 gigahertz, and so it locks at 100% CPU usage, but won't clock over 0.83, and it just makes me sit there and wait for 5 minutes.
The only
And funnily
possible
enough, you can't really
explanation.
do anything when you only have 830 megahertz of power in a modern CPU. So
It's all those stickers, clearly.
it's obviously all those stickers, but now it's running fine apparently. So.
Cool. Well, your video just went to heck, so that's good.
Oh, did it? It looks
Yeah.
fine down here. I can see it.
John Galloway is in beautiful HD.
That's true, and I think my math coprocessor is going out, so I'm with you guys.
Nice. Oh, you have a math coprocessor? That's my problem.
No, I hit the turbo button and things seem to work okay.
Nice. So
we're bringing nitrogen next time for Damien's.
Yeah.
We're gonna nitro cool this thing.
Before our hard drives fail, collectively, one of us is going to die at some point here with a blue screen or some kind of a driver failure.
Probably.
What is going on with you?
So this was the first week of coding for Beta 8. We will be doing Beta 7 verification next week. I'd already said that in the last couple of episodes. We flipped those 2 weeks around to allow extra time to get some external dependencies in. So we've started on that. Beta 8 and RC after it will be focusing almost primarily on polish. So we'll be doing lots of bug fixes, lots of filling back some engineering debt, stress, performance, experience polish, all those type of things. So there won't be an awful lot more features going in the release from now on forward as we get ready to make this thing ready for production usage. So that's going on. That's really the big update from us at this point here. We will have a Beta 7 release going out week after next, and as we kind of promised, Beta 7 will be a big push on cross-plat, so we'll have new .NET Core drops for Linux and for Mac, as well as Windows, in that release. We've had some DNVM updates in that time that are better suited or light up some scenarios like installing runtimes for alternate platforms, which is good, so that'll be coming on board as well. And then for Beta 8, as I said, the big push for quality. So
we get networking in Beta 7 for .NET Core as well.
Yeah, and so one part of that, as Scott just said, is getting networking and HTTP client working on .NET Core cross-plat. So you'll be able to finally do things like run DNU restore on a Mac and Linux without having to use Mono. You'll be able to use .NET Core to do that, and then conversely, you'll be able to use HTTP client to make off-box calls from your server apps as well. So that'll all be lighting up in Beta 7 for the first time.
Cool. Why is our boss there? It's making me nervous.
I don't know. I came in and he was here already, and he said he wanted to stay. I didn't say he couldn't. So
I don't get.
I gotta be able to hang out occasionally. I mean, it's been a month or two, so.
Not a problem. But having my review later this week, and then you roll in shorts and a hat. It's just a little nerve-wracking.
I wear the hat every day. It's sunny in Seattle. I burn.
You burn.
Damien surprises me. If anybody I'd expect to wear a hat, it's Damien.
Okay.
Actually, what I wanted to talk about was something that Damien and I were talking about recently, which is he and I were in New Zealand a few months ago, and we did a workshop on ASP.NET 5. And you said you and John Galloway were somewhere and did a workshop.
Yeah, we did one at NDC Oslo this year, which went really well.
And so Damien and I have been talking about maybe instead of, right now for the last couple of years, mainly we've been on the speaker circuit and done like an hour here or an hour there on ASP.NET 5. And I'd love to say that as a team that we start trying to do workshops at all the places that we go instead of just doing an hour here, an hour there, which really is kind of not enough to cover the reality that we've rebooted the entire platform. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you come for an hour, I don't know if you get enough to actually build an app and do stuff. And so what I'd like to see the team start doing is start finding a way to do workshops at all the places that we go. And maybe we don't do as many talks, and we let the community do the talks, and we do the 8-hour workshops.
Okay. And by 8 hours, I assume you mean 4.
Last time John Galloway and I did one, it was not 4 hours.
So John and I did one that was 2 days.
2 full days.
Okay. So that's interesting. So let's take that as a point of feedback in the sense of if you, the viewer, agree with Hunter. Like if, for example, let's say Damien and I go to NDC London in January. Would you rather see us do a talk, or would you rather see us do like a pre-con or a post-con kind of a workshop?
They're going to say both.
Yeah, and we
I
can
know
do
they're going to
both.
say both, but they're going to have to pay, and I can be paid in Lego. We don't get
But I'd love to
paid.
hear feedback.
We don't get paid
I'd love to hear feedback.
We don't get paid for conferences, but I can take gifts of less than $1 for candy and
People
Lego.
want to learn, the whole stack, or they just want to have us, do a bunch of demos for an hour and not know as much as they could.
But what about all the animated GIFs?
Those are for your hour.
Soon. All right, cool. So where are we going to be, Hunter? Are you going to rattle that off, or should I?
Yeah, so I was going to, will this let me do this?
You should mark your calendars, and I put this up on my blog, on my website, rather.
You'll have to hit the green one on your screen.
I did.
You did?
It says sharing right now.
Yep.
Oh,
Can we flip to... There we go.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the upcoming travel that we have, where you can hear, the latest from ASP.NET 5 from the team. Both Hansman and I are going to be in Amsterdam on October 15th for angle brackets and dev intersections, and we're doing talks on ASP.NET 5 there. After that, we're going to fly to Poland, and we're going to do another talk there on October the 19th, and then we're going to move to Sweden, and we'll be in Sweden on October 21st. And then I'll let you talk to the next one, Hansman. Where is this one at? This is Norway, right?
Trondheim?
Trondheim, yeah.
Right, land of trolls and gnomes. That is going to be northern Norway, and I'll be up there for TDC, which is going to be pretty awesome. And so yeah, if you're on that side of Norway, come check us out. The travel is really kind of ridiculous. I don't think we intended it to be like this. It just kind of happened.
Not with my name associated with 4 of these or 3 of these in a couple of week and a half, and then we'll be back in the U.S. and Hansman and Damien will be at Dev Intersections in Vegas.
Yep.
And then we'll probably have some kind of RC launch event in November.
And you missed that I will be in. I will be in Italy on the 26th of September at WebNext Conf, and I will be in Finland in Helsinki on the 25th at Reactor. It's called Reactor Breakpoint.
Based on feedback, I think after we get through this round of conferences, I think we'll start focusing on workshops. I like the idea.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So thanks for telling us that before you told everyone.
Welcome.
We apparently were doing workshops, John, for the rest of the year.
Sounds good.
Damien and I are sitting over here deciding, workshops is a good idea.
Yeah. Well, the ones that we did this year seem to go quite well.
Yeah. It definitely does, going in more depth instead of the quick demo of like, hey, you could theoretically do this thing, and actually building something out and digging into it more. Definitely.
Yeah. The reality for the last 5 or 10 years, we've been just adding stuff on to what we've already been shipping, and so it's really more of an addendum to what you already know. This is a reset.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is in line with what we planned on doing. We did, for example, the Microsoft Virtual Academy that should be out, which in the next week or two. We're going to do 3 of those. We just did one, which is the Intro to ASP.NET. It was 2 full days. And then we're going to do an advanced one in a couple of months. And then a couple of months after that, we will do a cross-platform one. So that should give you nearly a week of training. And then the goal would be to have sometime next year some kind of a presentation in the box or workshop in a box. So if you, the person who is watching the live stand-up right now, want to give a workshop on your own, we'll have the tools to give you that ability.
Cool.
Shiny?
Shiny.
All right, cool.
John, you got some community links, I think, from last week? We cut you off last week.
I do, yeah. Here, let me... Just a second. See, it's complicated. I got to move my screens around. I did. I plus sized them though because that's important. That's an important step.
Good prep work.
All right. I was caught off guard. I thought I would have some. Okay. There it is. Okay, so first of all, can you see this okay?
Yep.
Good. All right. So James Chambers, he wrote about writing custom commands for DNX with ASP.NET 5. So these are, we've got the built-in ones with like web and EF, and he dug in a little bit more into how to write your own custom ones. So that is cool. We got David Paquette writing about MVC6 tag helpers, and he wrote what he calls the complete guide, which is pretty exciting. So he digs into.
Yeah, it's great. I tweeted that one too. That was a fantastic series.
Excellent. Yep. Okay. We have Marcos Placona on the Twilio blog, and he's writing about ASP.NET 5 with Visual Studio Code on a Mac. So that's kind of cool to see that walkthrough. And what's nice at the end of this is, of course, he integrates with Twilio as well. So he's going in and pulling in Twilio dependency and calling out to Twilio. We have Syed writing about unit testing DNX using Sidewaffle and XUnit, so that's kind of cool. So first he goes through and does, shows how to do it with Sidewaffle and Visual Studio, and then he also shows you using Yeoman. So that's nice, using the Yeoman generator.
So for people, just on that, we do intend to add back the unit test project type to the ASP.NET dialog. So when you create a new ASP.NET application, you'll be able to tick a box that says, please create me the XUnit or the unit test project. We probably will end up either doing that in Beta 8 or the RC release. Because the code is churning so much right now still, we keep breaking XUnit. So it's hard for us to go through the sign-off process for an external open source library and get that shipped in Visual Studio when we keep having to force them to make changes to react to our breaking changes. So that's just why we've had that delay there. But as the churn goes down, which it will in Beta 8 and then obviously in RC, we'll be able to line up features like that. So it'll either make it in Beta 8 or RC, or maybe even the RTM release we'll see when we stop breaking them. But I just wanted to let people know we will be bringing that checkbox back at some point.
Cool. All right. Then this one's just kind of a quick one from Josh Graham, and he just wrote what he did in terms of upgrading an ASP.NET 5 Beta 5 to Beta 6 application. So this is kind of more anecdotal. Here's what I had to change. But Derek says it's fantastically useful, so I agree. Let me see. We have... This one is Taskmatics, and it's Dave Mariani, and he writes about how to run DNX applications as a Windows service. And I'd seen some questions kind of come up about this. I'm not sure if this is kind of the supported way of doing this.
Oh, didn't Damien, didn't you try to do this? Have you read this yet?
Yeah, so this happened after the last week when I said I'd time boxed it, tried to get something working, and then this community member went off and figured it out themselves and blogged it and tweeted it to me, and I retweeted it, and yeah, so this basically the one change was that he made his startup class derive from service base, whereas I had tried to call into an instance of service base from the startup class, and that seems to be the big difference. If you follow this, it seems to work.
Well, now he's just showing off. That's amazing.
Yeah, now he's totally showing off. So that was awesome.
Brilliant.
So I haven't actually tried it myself yet. I'm just trusting that it works. But obviously at some point we'll try it, and that'll become part of our official docs, assuming this is the correct way to do it. But I don't see anything wrong with it so far.
Well, so that's an interesting question, and we haven't talked about this. Put you on the spot. Docs.asp.net exists. He's got a blog post. If he's listening, should he go and make that a pull request and throw it into the docs?
Yeah, if it fits it within the current model. Like, I don't want people just obviously sending random articles to put in the documentation. We have a doc plan, and we have a series of articles we're going through that we want to build up progressively. I don't think it helps anyone if the docs for the next 6 months is just a random collection of stuff as it becomes available. We want progressive disclosure. We want things to make sense as they come online and get the really important stuff and foundational stuff done first, then the common scenarios, etc., etc. But that doesn't mean he should certainly log an issue. That's the first thing I would do, is log an issue on the docs repo to say, we should have a docs article that talks about how to set up a DNX app as a Windows service. He can point to the blog post as a representation of what content would have to be covered, and then we can feed that into the doc plan to ensure that it lines up with our plans as we get towards RTMing the product.
Cool.
All right. Let me see. Jerry Pelser. So just pointing out again, I mentioned this before, but Jerry Pelser has a really cool weekly newsletter, so I'm sure this will get wrapped up in there as well. But Here he has one on resolving dependencies differently depending on whether a user is logged in or not, which is nice. So again, it's cool to see how people are digging into things that you can do with, using the configuration and dependency injection. And I have one more that I didn't have on that screen. Boom, there it is. So this is Ben A. Adams, and he's done some cool stuff as far as high-speed file serving and stuff like that with the stuff they're doing on Age of Ascent. This one was cool because he went into actually reducing node module recursion, and this is using NPM 3, and he was able to cut down his file size and stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So the other thing that's great. The other thing, NPM version 3.
Yep.
Which we haven't shipped in Visual Studio yet because it's still in development, but there are now pre-releases of NPM version 3, goes a long way to fixing this issue as well.
Yeah, so that's actually what he did in his.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Yep. So he said instead of, having all, because with NPM version 2, you've got all the nesting and you've got multiple copies of the same thing. So, so there you go.
Perfect.
And that's it for me.
Cool. Shall we answer some questions?
Let's do it. So,
all right.
Q&A.
So the first one, now the .NET 5 or Core 5 is split out into a bunch of assemblies. How do I find stuff that's moved? So two things. First of all, we have a website, an official website at packagesearch.azurewebsites.net, assuming it's still up, that Glenn Condron, PM on our team, wrote, that does a reverse index of types in NuGet packages. So you can type in a type name into the search, and it will tell you the NuGet package that contains that type. We are building a Visual Studio feature that's based on this same technology, so that if you try and use a type, you'll get a light bulb that'll, when you control dot, will offer to install the package that contains that type for you. Now, doing that correctly and in a helpful way is an extremely difficult thing. So we had the feature in originally, but it turned out to be too noisy, and it would just offer too many suggestions that would ultimately usually be the wrong thing. So we're spending a lot of time right now tuning that experience so that it more often than not, like vastly more often than not, suggests the correct package to install. There's two things you can do. You can wait for the VS feature, which obviously we're going to do, but in the meantime, use packagesearch.azurewebsites.net to find those examples where they've moved a type from one package to another. Luke asks, the server header is added in responses. Is the best way to kill the header to use an action filter attribute? I wish I had a more global way to kill it. So the server header is defined in the spec, and it's there. Nearly every web server on the planet adds the server header. It isn't added by ASP.NET. It's added by the underlying server. So trying to kill it in the action filter attribute will not get you anywhere. You need to kill it at the server level. So if you're running on top of IIS, you need to try and determine if there's a way using IIS config to nix the server header on the way out. I'm actually not sure if you can. I haven't tried doing the server header. I certainly kill the X-powered-by header when I do that, but I've never tried to kill the server header itself. In Kestrel, we just added the server header recently. We do add it in Kestrel in the header dictionary, so you can just delete it from the header dictionary from your code. You would be able to do that in the action filter attribute, because Kestrel is a managed web server. You can, and it is tied directly to those constructs. You can just kill it, but it depends on the server you're running on as to how best to get rid of the server header, because it's added by the server. It's not added by ASP.NET. Next question by Lewis. I would love to see. Oh, they're talking about the types of things we asked at the beginning. I'd love to see both types of talks in South Africa. I can pay in beers and pizza. Well, Hansman won't accept payment in beer and probably not in pizza either. I will happily accept payment in beers and pizza.
We haven't been to South Africa in a couple of years. It's probably time for us to head down there. So I will look at getting down there sometime next year.
Next year,
So Ken says, any big drawback with doing, for us doing workshops instead of talks is that workshops typically aren't recorded. There's a good reason for that. Workshops are generally paid for separately, and they're much longer content. But Hanson looks like he has one.
Well, also, I would say that most of the time we go do talks at big trade shows, yes, they are recorded and streamable. But if we're at smaller places, they're not. So I mean, if we're at an NDC or a Tech Ed or a Build, you're going to see the content being streamed. if we're not one of those places,
It won't be.
the small places don't have the money to actually buy the equipment and pay for the bandwidth and everything else to do it.
But also, the people who put on the
Talk about our MVA, sir.
people who put on the paid get their way there. They can pay for their flights and stuff. We are not, because we work for Microsoft, and we also have Microsoft Virtual Academy on our side, which will be the same content. So the workshops that we do will be also in the Microsoft Virtual Academy.
Yep.
And then one, I believe, is looking at a thing that he's calling Microsoft ASP.NET Code Show. Glenn and I are going to do some and stream it. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to see video of workshop-like content, and we'll make sure that it's all up in one place on the ASP.NET website.
Cool. Any info regarding the auth server? Scott, you were talking to me about that today, were you not?
Yeah, so the auth server that Brock Allen and company have been working on, the identity server, we are helping them get that ready to hopefully have it ready in November when we have our RC.
Perfect.
So we just are working together with them and reached an agreement today, and I hope that if things work out, we'll be ready in November with that.
Cool.
So
That's a good update on that.
how does that work? Because this is like the first time where we didn't do something and someone else did it. It's an open source thing, but there's partnerships and stuff like that. Do we promote it? Does it get linked to from our...
Well, that's not the first time at all, right? JSON.NET we've used as a core component
that's a
for a
valid
while
point.
now.
Well,
Attributes.
it's a good question, though.
James.
And we've helped James out over time. I mean, we're more than happy to help projects out.
And we shipped it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we shipping this one too?
Yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined, but if we even if we don't ship it, I think we're going to say it's the main process. So for example, if you're building an ASP.NET application today, we used to have this web administration tool, and it went away when we moved off of the user authentication model we had back in .NET 2. Now that we've got this new identity system, we never have replaced that stuff with a new version of this. These guys' stuff does that, has a great screen where you can add users, change their access, stuff like that. And so, we'll promote it for people that want that same flexibility they had in .NET 2.
So I think our docs would refer to it, like when it talks about if you're building APIs which you need to authenticate just from your own SPA, and you don't want to use cookies, we'll probably have docs on how to set up the identity server to do that. And then as Scott said, if you need to do the full-blown sort of user management type thing, we'll cover that type of stuff.
They do both that. They do token management. They do user management, all of that stuff.
Okay. Any updates on performance? Yes, I ran a couple of updates this morning. So Kestrel, we hit 164,000, I think, requests a second today. With the date header fix that I'm currently still working on. It's in a branch right now. It needs to be cleaned up, but we're just validating that doing that code will actually get us the improvement there. We still have a long way to go. Like our target, realistically, on this server is at least 5 times that throughput. I'm not promising we're going to get that for version 1, but that's kind of the target we're working towards. And we have to work on lots of stuff at the same time. It's not like we have 3 people working primarily on performance for Kestrel right now. We don't. We have a list of things that we can work through, and we're working through them, and we're profiling, and we're triaging them along with all the other functional issues and all those type of things as well. So, but we have a short-term goal, a mid-term goal, and a long-term goal in terms of performance. And right now we're trying to get the biggest bang for buck that we can, and make sure that we don't do anything really stupid that prevents us, getting better performance later. But just look to see that get better and better as the product matures, up to V1 and beyond V1.
And are you focused on Kestrel, or are you focused on IIS or both?
No, so that was just Kestrel, but you were also making focus changes in MVC, both to do with CPU use and with memory use. So iHTML content, which was a big change coming in Beta 7, is primarily around performance. Is why that's being done. And then we're looking at the model binding system. We're looking at the HTTP abstractions to ensure that we're not allocating too much stuff and doing that efficiently. So we're looking at it holistically. But the web server is one area that we've been able to get a lot of sort of bang for buck very quickly. And frankly, Kestrel needed a lot of work to get it up to at least be as good as our other web servers, and we're there now. So that's good. Any ideas when we are likely to see the Azure Cloud projects integrated into VS for vNext projects?
Cloud projects integrated into VS for vNext projects.
Right. Can I create an Azure Cloud role, web role using...
I assume you're talking about web roles and
Worker
Yeah,
roles.
worker roles.
Yep.
To be determined. I'll be honest with you right now. The compute team has been offering new forms of compute, kind of like they're calling it PaaS v2, I think is the term they've been using. And the question for us is, do we go invest in the existing worker role, web role, or do we invest in PaaS v2? And we just need feedback from customers to tell us where we should put our effort. Right now, I'm leaning towards the newer stuff.
Cool. EF seems to not be that stable as the MVC part. Is there a coincidence that it will catch up with the mainstream, or is there a backup plan to use EF6? I'm not quite sure what that means. EF should be it's on the same cadence as us. They're shipping with us in terms of ASP.NET 5. There's certainly unknown takebacks in functionality in EF7 that are well documented. They have a lot of details about that up on their website when they'll be coming back. Stability, if you have known stability issues, I encourage you to log them, and the team will triage those along with everything else. We certainly don't want any part of the stack to be seen as less stable than the rest of it, given where we are. So if you have issues you know about, please log those.
But there would not be a takeback to EF6 because EF6 will not run on .NET Core.
Correct.
And will not run on ASP.NET 5 if you want to run it on Mac.
If you want to run on Mac and Linux, correct. Very quickly, to finish up, let's see what we can answer very quickly. Yeah, so Luke says, maybe I said something wrong. Action filter attributes should not be able to kill the server header. They're using it right now, and it seems to be working from looking at Fiddler. It might. It is a server thing. My understanding, just sitting here right now, is that it probably wouldn't work for IIS, but maybe we also did the work to plumb those things together. Maybe I'm just wrong. If it's working for you, keep using it. I probably wouldn't do it in Action Filter. I would do it in middleware. In the pipeline, so I just do an inline app.use and remove the header that way rather than doing it with an MVC construct, which seems like it's a little bit too close to the MVC side of the house.
Most people do it with modules. That's the way if you're on ASP.NET Classic. That's how most people do it with
middleware
modules.
is the modern equivalent.
Exactly.
So I would do it in middleware. If it works for you, great. I was wrong, and if it doesn't, then I was right, and whatever.
There are some server headers that IIS puts on that you cannot take off. So if you want to take on the header saying that's being served by IIS, that does not even come through our pipeline at all, and you can't take that.
That was my understanding. But so for example, I removed the X powered by header that IIS adds for ASP.NET using the web.config file. So because that's where IIS does its config. Is any work being done to allow for obfuscation? I've had bad experiences trying to obfuscate. Frankly, no. There's been no work done at all to do with allowing, I'm assuming they mean IL obfuscation. Certainly, now that we have a symmetry in the compilation pipeline between dynamic compilation and sort of design time ahead of time compilation, you could plug into that. I don't know of anyone working on a compile module that would let you do that. Because we have a different compilation model. We have an inbuilt compiler that's part of DNX. It's not run through the CS compiler, like the command line compiler, and done after the fact. But that said, we still produce assemblies. If you do a publish, we produce a package. Inside that package is assemblies. You should be able to run any standard IL obfuscation utility as long as it can run on assemblies. You can crack the assembly, you can null out the IL, you can obfuscate them, you can do all that type of thing, as long as you can package it back into the assembly and deploy it. And assuming the way that they then hook in at runtime still works, when we custom boot the CLR, I mean, that's a big if, then that should be able to work. But for the same way that profilers still work, and memory profiles and CPU profiles and debugging still works, we're still the CLR. So as long as you can hook into the CLR the same way, that stuff should still be able to work. Scott, you had a hard stop right now, right? So we should finish up.
Yeah, well, I was just told that my hard stop is walking into her office, so we've got a couple more minutes. Let's just finish.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank
so
you.
It's Microsoft meetings, but it doesn't show.
It'd be interesting to see a conference talk on how you went about the process of redeveloping ASP.NET. It's been interesting to get an insight via the stand-ups. Yeah, so it's David Fowler and I have certainly talked about doing a talk next year once we've shipped the 1.0. on kind of the entire inception and genesis and then development of ASP.NET all the way through with a bunch of behind.
It'd be fun even to put some Microsoft stuff in there, like how you sell it to the executive team.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Let us do this stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch more than just the engineering that goes into making this stuff happen.
Yeah, so they're a great idea. We've talked about that. I wouldn't be surprised if you see us do a talk like that next year.
An awesome book. I don't want to write a book. It'd be an awesome book.
Yeah. Lastly, someone has a request in the Razor repo for adding an optional line termination. Yeah, so there's an ongoing issue about that in the Razor repo. I'm not going to discuss specific issues in here. There is an issue in the Razor repo talking about that, and it's an ongoing debate about that. So,
Shiny.
cool.
Good job.
We're done.
Cool.
I will ready the slow dramatic zoom out.
All right, preparing and engage. Dramatic zoom out.